So the Israelis would say that they're going after militants and that they're doing precision targeting. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this is a tragic mishap. What's your view on what he said?
I mean, it's really hard to describe anything like this as a mishap. A mishap isn't the kind of word that you use when over 45 people have been killed and countless hundreds injured. So it's not for me to necessarily question that terminology, and I don't know exactly how it's been translated, but as it's appearing as a mishap, it sounds deeply inappropriate and deeply disrespectful. But look, I'd say that precision bombing, again, as we've said throughout this conflict and previous conflicts, there's no such thing in such a built-up, overcrowded place as Gaza, whether this be in high-rise towers in Gaza City or whether it be in tented camps down in Rafah. Whenever large explosives are used in a situation like this.
And today, Spain, Ireland and Norway will officially recognise a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, Brussels is preparing to issue an ultimatum to Israel or face consequences that could affect its economic relationship with the EU. Before the programme, I spoke to Sam Rose, who is the Director of Planning at the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA. Sam began by telling me what he witnessed on Sunday night as the strikes hit the camp in Rafah.
The strikes that happened the night before last were about 3 kilometers from where I was staying. It was 9:30 at night, so I didn't see. I heard something. We all heard something, but we constantly hear things where we are in Rafah. It's constant bombardments from the air, from the sea, the constant sound of drones, etc. So when we woke up the following morning, that we understood the extent of the incident.
When you say you're sort of hearing constant bombardments, I mean, Rafah is under siege effectively from the Israeli army, but the place which was bombed was meant to be a safe space for displaced people.
Well, it was not in the Israeli evacuation zone. It was outside what had been declared as the safe humanitarian zone on the coast, but there was no reason whatsoever for the people who'd been displaced to this area to move. I mean, nowhere in Gaza is safe. We've been saying this as a mantra for several months, but this was an area that they'd been forcibly displaced to over the past several months, and they had not been told that they should evacuate, or rather be forcibly displaced from this area. So there were tens of thousands of people in the encampments around these areas.
And of course, there is nowhere else for them to go now. The crossing is still closed towards Egypt. There's literally nowhere else for refugees in Gaza to move to.
People who are leaving out into Egypt, they have to pay large amounts of money. The vast majority of people who are displacing from Rafah, and we estimate about 1 million people have left this place over the last 3 weeks, which is quite extraordinary in terms of recent humanitarian history. They've moved towards the beach area of Mawasi, which is essentially sand dunes along the coast, and then the next block back of it is agricultural land, barren land, or they've been pushed back up further into the city of Khan Yunis, which itself was subjected to heavy bombardments just a couple of months ago and is largely in ruins.
So the Israelis would say that they're going after militants and that they're doing precision targeting. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this is a tragic mishap. What's your view on what he said?
I mean, it's really hard to describe anything like this as a mishap. A mishap isn't the kind of word that you use when over 45 people have been killed and countless hundreds injured. So it's not for me to necessarily question that terminology, and I don't know exactly how it's been translated, but as it's appearing as a mishap, it sounds deeply inappropriate and deeply disrespectful. But look, I'd say that precision bombing, again, as we've said throughout this conflict and previous conflicts, there's no such thing in such a built-up, overcrowded place as Gaza, whether this be in high-rise towers in Gaza City or whether it be in tented camps down in Rafah. Whenever large explosives are used in a situation like this, given the cramped and overcrowded conditions in which people are living, there will be civilian consequences, and in this case larger than in many of the incidents. But it's not isolated in the sense that there have been major civilian casualties from what a so-called targeted military attack.
Obviously, we've learnt the news that Spain, Ireland and Norway are going to officially recognise Palestine as a state. What impact do you think that will have?
I mean, it'll certainly have no impact for the immediate impact for the people on the ground in Rafah who are numb, who are just kind of moving in fear of their lives right now. The area I am now, about a kilometre south of where these attacks happened, and there were further bombardments last night as well, are just fleeing in fear of their lives. They're gathering up their belongings, whatever they've got left, jerry cans, tarpaulin sheets, wooden frames, etc., and they're moving. So certainly in the immediate term, the declaration will have no humanitarian impacts, but hopefully it will put further pressure on the parties to the conflict to come to a solution and agree on a ceasefire.
Do you have any inkling at all when this might end? Is it just simply living day to day?
We're living day to day. We're quite often right now, as we're going through a moment of a period of increased fragility, we're often living hour to hour. So no sense really on when this may end. We were told several weeks ago that the operation in Rafah was a limited operation. That's a statement that appears to have been reneged upon now that we've got almost half the population on the move again. And who's to say that that will be who's to say that that will be the end of it? It just seems to be an ongoing operation where people are being constantly pushed into different areas of Gaza. So no real sense of when this is going to come to an end right now, unfortunately.
Well, that was Sam Rose, the Director of Planning at UNRWA, speaking near Gaza. And it is indeed the case that Ireland has just this second formally recognised Palestine as a state. We'll have more on that throughout the afternoon as things develop on that in terms of reaction to that formal announcement.